We are live. Welcome back to Fit Body Secrets, where my mission is to bring you guys motivation, inspiration, and tips to help you guys on your fitness journey. And I'm in a good place today. I am like riding the high of just life right now. I'm excited for this month. I'm going to start off by talking to you guys about what's coming up. So, a couple of things. One, my fat loss frameworks course. I ran a beta group on that back in October, where I kind of had pre-released the modules for them to be able to work through as part of my group, and it is actually officially almost done. A couple of little typos and things like that to finish up, a couple of guides to add in, but the whole program is almost done, and I'm so excited for that. And part two is I am actually launching my first jumpstart of 2024. I'm excited for that as well. So I typically will run a group program 3 or 4 times a year. And I'm actually thinking about doing this one a little bit differently, where it might actually end up being continuous. It's just going to depend on how I feel after. I want to see how it goes. But I want to talk to you guys before I roll into today's topic on what my jumpstart is. So if you do have questions about it, hopefully this will answer some of them for you. So I am running a 21-day jumpstart. It starts on February 11th, the week of February 11th. There's going to be a kickoff call on February the 8th at 4 p.m. EST. All of the calls are always recorded, so that if you cannot make it live, you can still watch them and you can still participate by asking questions. And the program is called AMRAP 21 Macros, because for 21 days, I'm going to be focusing on teaching you guys how to simplify using a flexible approach to macros to achieve the results you want for yourself, which for a lot of you guys is, I really would like to lose some fat. I would like to perform a little bit better in the gym. I don't want to feel like I'm constantly thinking about food all the time. Like those are like the 3 main things, right? So I'm going to simplify things for you guys, but here's also what you're getting. You're not just getting a teacher who's teaching you guys what to do. I'm actually going to be coaching you through this. So you're going to be getting customized nutrient targets, so you'll know exactly how much you should be eating for your goals. And if you're following the plan, you will be losing 1 to 2 pounds of fat a week. That is the goal, and getting you guys into a place of building some momentum so that you can continue on beyond 21 days. And I've already had people signing up are like, hey, if I decide I like the program and I want to keep going with you, what does that look like? Which is obviously my goal, is to get you guys to keep working with us. But either way, whether you do or not, I want you guys to be able to take away the things you need to be successful. So if you would like to sign up for the Jumpstart, it starts on February the 8th. So I do need to get everybody's details done ahead of time. So the earlier you guys sign up, the earlier I'll be able to start working on that stuff. So, and the link will be in the show notes. You'll also be able to find it on my Instagram, my Facebook, if you're in my Facebook group and all that kinds of stuff. So if you're a current client and you're watching, you can definitely participate. My clients love this kinds of shit, which is awesome. But so the cost of the AMRAP 21 macros, it's $97. $97 to have me personally set your macros up for you, give you a plan, give you access to all of my client stuff. You're going to have plenty of resources. Like $97 is literally, it might as well be a cup of Starbucks coffee. It's really that cheap. And it's definitely, I'll be honest, guys, I don't discount things. I know that what I provide is a lot of value. But for this, I wanted to make it accessible for everybody to get a little taste of coaching. So $97 gets you everything. If you're a client of mine, obviously you get to participate for free because you pretty much already have me as a coach. You're just there for the rah-rah. So that's what I got coming up. So I'm excited for the course, and I'm also excited for the 21-day jumpstart. So if you know somebody that you think needs to jump in on it, you can also tag them in this as well, and all that good stuff. Good morning, Miss Holly. So today's topic, we are going to be talking about carbs. And the reason I wanted to talk about this topic today is I got a message yesterday from a client of mine, and I got to look back at the message, but it was something along the lines of, are all carbs created equal? It was something along those lines. So I wanted to kind of just pull it up and just let y'all actually hear the exact question she asked me. She said, okay, I do have a question. Is a carb a carb? I know there are better choices of carbs, but essentially, is a carb a carb? And I get this question a lot. not just with carbs, but with all foods. Our calories created equal, our carbs created equal. And I think this is where like the whole if it fits your macros things can sometimes get a little wishy-washy, right? Because, and I'm going to kind of go into that a little bit. So first and foremost, when it comes to nutrition, all right, so there's different pieces of nutrition before I get into carbs. You've got to think about all the components, right? Nutrition, we need to get nutrients in, and carbohydrates are a source of nutrients. So is protein, so is fat. So we want to make sure we are eating a pretty well balanced whole food based diet. But when it comes to actually isolating our macros, today I want to talk a little bit about this carb thing, because I think it's really important for people to understand that, yes, a carb is a carb, but there's a lot more to it than that. And there's a lot of people that demonize carbs, a lot of people that are afraid of carbs, a lot of people that think that they're carb addicts. It's just all of this stuff about carbs that I just kind of want to hopefully tease out from you guys and get you guys to understand what really matters most. And primarily, I know that I tell this the truth about carbs and fat loss, but it really is also about how they affect your body in terms of hormonally, in terms of performance, in terms of everything. So I want you guys to really get a little bit of everything in today's episode. So first and foremost, let's talk about carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are essentially our source of calories. Every gram of carbs has 4 calories. So if I have 25 grams of carbs, I've eaten 100 calories. Carbohydrates are primarily things like our fruits and vegetables, rice, potatoes, pasta, also whole grain breads, wraps, those types of things are primarily carbohydrate based. A lot of breakfast cereal is primarily carbohydrate based. And so that's going to be your largest source of carbs. I think the biggest misconception that I want to start with is that a lot of people associate things like chips, chips, cookies, cake, what else? Those types of foods, pizza, sushi, they associate those types of things with being carb cravings. Like those are foods that have carbs in them, usually in larger amounts, but they're not a carb source. Those are actually a source of carbs and fats, or combination foods, I like to call them. So it's really important to differentiate between a carb and a combination food that has carbs in it. So this is where you have to be a smart consumer and look at the food labels, look at the nutrition and facts of things before you just pick it up and think, oh, this is a carb. Like you see, it's not that way. So when it comes to carbs, I want you guys to understand that you're looking for primarily carbs only on the label. Do the types of carbs we eat matter? Okay. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is, matter for what, right? Because we have to think about the overall reason for carbohydrates and why you're questioning things. So when it comes to fat loss versus performance in the gym versus health, right? Those are kind of like the main 3 things. So health, I'm going to encompass things like metabolism, hormones, blood sugar. Performance is like energy, building muscle, getting stronger. And then obviously fat loss is getting you leaner, getting you healthier, losing weight, right? So here's what you need to know about carbohydrates. First and foremost, there's a couple of different components of the type a couple of different things that the types of carbohydrates that you eat. I'm getting all tongue tied again. Let's go ahead and start by talking about the whole carb is a carb thing. All right. So the truth is, yes, a carb is a carb. If I have 25 grams of carbs from gummy bears, or I have 25 grams of carbs from watermelon, I have had primarily 25 grams of carbs. However, the gummy bears versus the watermelon might be a little different in terms of what nutrients I'm also taking from it. If I also compared things like gummy bears versus a high fiber cereal or oatmeal, you're going to see that the gummy bears also have things like don't have any fiber in them. They're primarily just glucose, whereas the oatmeal is going to have things like fiber and other nutrients in it. So even though a carb really at 25 grams of carbs is still 25 grams of carbs, not all foods are going to give you the same thing. So you're going to get more bang from your buck from different types of carbs. So When we're talking about carbohydrates, you want to make sure that you're not just filling your diet with empty carbs, quote unquote. When I say empty carbs, they're not providing any nutrients, they're just straight up glucose. So if you were just eating all of your carbs from soda and sweet potato, or sorry, gummy bears and sweets like that, then you're not getting any other nutrients. But that's usually not the case. Most people aren't eating carbohydrates in isolation like that. Um, the other thing that you guys have to understand is that even though all carbs are quote unquote 25 grams of carbs from gummy bears versus call it an apple, fiber intake is going to play a factor. There's a couple of other things that are going to play a factor. So that's what I kind of want to go into right now. That's why I wanted to start by talking about that. So first and foremost, we have to think about when it comes to fat loss and carbs, okay, there's something called the thermic effect of food. And when we're talking about all of our macronutrients, what I want you guys to understand is that your macronutrients all have a different thermic effect. Fat is the least thermic. So that means that it burns the least amount of calories in digestion. Carbohydrates, you burn 5 to 10% of calories of your total daily energy expenditure is digesting carbohydrates. And then protein, actually, we burn 20 to 30% of our energy needs through digestion of protein. So when it comes to carbohydrates, the first thing that we want to consider when it comes to fat loss is the amount of carbohydrates eaten. And I'm going to say calories, the amount of calories eaten versus the amount of calories digested, because I don't want this to be isolated just to carbohydrates. When it comes to fat loss, you have to understand that carbohydrate intake doesn't affect fat loss. It's overall calorie intake that's going to affect your fat loss. So carbohydrates is only one piece of that. So if you lower your carb intake but you're still eating too much fat and protein, you're not going to lose weight. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and say calories. Calorie digestion versus calories eaten are two different things. So especially with carbohydrates, because as I just mentioned, we have a little bit of a thermic effect from eating them. So we're going to obviously burn a little bit of calories just to digest them, but also the amount of calories we actually absorb from different types of carbohydrates is going to be different. Higher fiber carbohydrates, we're going to absorb less of those calories than a lower fiber carbohydrate. Also, things like, like a liquid carb is going to be all digested versus broccoli, which is not going to be as much digested, right? So things like that are going to play a factor. So we want to make sure we're getting in mostly whole foods if our goal is fat loss for two reasons. One, we're obviously going to have a little bit of an edge on our calorie expenditure by causing more calorie expenditure by digestion. But two, we're also going to feel more satiated. Drinking our carbohydrates is not going to be near as satiating as eating something high in fiber and then having to have your body break it down. Obviously, we want to have flexibility in our diet. So this is where people kind of go wrong and they demonize carbohydrates like, oh, I shouldn't be eating these foods. No, you just have to understand how they're factoring into your overall goals. And if you're getting hungry all the time, you might not want to be drinking your carbohydrates. And if you're finding yourself sluggish a little bit on the scale and you're looking at your food quality and you're getting all your carbs from things like white rice and sugar, then you might want to think about adding in some more high fiber stuff. You might find that you don't have to actually drop calories just by changing the way you're getting your carbohydrates in. You actually might see faster results. So, Megan, I love this. I am eating more carbs now than ever before, and I'm still losing weight. Absolutely. Because most people think carbohydrates are the problem, and they're not the problem. It's really combination foods and honestly, just overall too many calories. So, when it comes to fat loss and carbohydrates, what you have to understand is that overall calories matter, but the types of calories you're consuming, if we're talking about carbohydrates, higher fiber, more whole food based carbohydrates are going to be more thermogenic and they're going to be less digested. So you might be able to diet on a little bit more food if you're eating a whole food based diet. Okay. Let's talk about carbohydrates and their role with overall health. This is something else that people start to get into a little bit of the weeds with, right? So they talk about, oh, carbs are going to spike my insulin levels. And if I've got to worry about my blood sugar, then I can't be eating carbohydrates. And this is also a misconception. And I don't want to go and get into the weeds with like glycemic index and glycemic load, but a lot of this stuff really doesn't matter as much as the amount of calories you're consuming from them. So if and also the components of your meals. So, yes, if I'm literally sitting down and I have 3 tablespoons of sugar, I'm likely going to spike my blood sugar, but it's also going to come back down. But if I'm continuing to just spike my blood sugar with that stuff and I'm over consuming calories, then yes, I will start to have too much insulin running in my bloodstream. But what most people focus on is, oh my gosh, like I've got to be eating like I can't be eating these high, fast digested carbs. And that's really not the problem. What it really is the problem is like the balance of your foods. You want to look at other things. So when it comes to for your overall health from a blood sugar perspective, you should be eating balanced meals and you should be controlling overall calorie intake. If your overall calorie intake is in place, or is in check with either a slight deficit or maintenance, you're not going to be obsessively, or I'm sorry, unnecessarily or excessively spiking your blood sugar. And if you are balancing out your meals, you're going to keep your blood sugar more regulated throughout the day. That means having a little bit of protein, carbs, and fats together that helps balance things out. My gosh, I saw a Instagram reel yesterday, tangent, and it just made me start thinking about how messed up society is at the dieting culture. This woman went on about how the order of your food matters for your blood sugar, how you've got to eat it in a certain way in order for your blood sugar not to spike. And I was like, people are just going crazy. Just going crazy. Just whatever. So other components of health that I wanted to talk about too as well is women, especially with hormone issues. Going through perimenopause, menopause, trying to hold on to lean muscle mass, thyroid issues often are very afraid of carbohydrates. They've been made to believe that carbohydrates are making them sick or making them fat or causing belly fat and all this kinds of stuff. And that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, a lot of times women don't realize that by eliminating carbohydrates, they're eliminating a huge source of nutrients for their body. And so we want to make sure we are getting in enough carbohydrates as well. And then the last piece of carbs that I want to talk about that also ties into fat loss is how carbohydrates affect your energy levels in the gym, your performance, and your ability to build lean muscle tissue. So, carbohydrates are your body's primary source of energy. So, if you're not getting in enough carbohydrates, you're likely not feeling great in your workouts. And you might not even know it because you've been eating that way for a long time. In fact, I had a client that came to me eating from a paleo diet, and she was gaining weight because she was eating too many calories, but she was also feeling like shit in her workout. So she was eating super clean, but she wasn't getting in enough carbs. So like it was making her feel like crap. And when we just kind of made a couple of switches, her weight started to come down and now she's feeling much better in the gym. So carbs are your body's main source of energy. We want to make sure we're getting the optimal amount for us, depending on where our goals are. And we still have to control overall calories, but being on a at least 40 to 50% carbs is kind of the sweet spot for most people in order to obviously still be able to feel great in their workouts, even in a calorie deficit, and create fat loss while still improving performance and all that kinds of stuff. So, from a performance perspective, by eliminating carbohydrates, you're actually blunting your results a little bit. The other thing about this too is if you are under consuming carbohydrates and you're in a fat loss phase, your workouts are going to be suffering. So you're not burning as many calories. So I think it's really important for you guys to realize that optimizing your carb intake is the goal. Like I would always much rather, especially in a fat loss phase, I try and get people to eat a little bit higher carb, a little bit lower fat, especially for CrossFitters, because I just think it tends to help with appetite along with energy levels for your workouts. So, yeah, for sure, Judy. This is a good topic. So, so basically, guys, I know this is not going to be a super long episode. I'm going to kind of sum it up for you right now, Judy, because I love doing that for you guys. I had a question from a client asking if a carb is really a carb, and the reality is, a carb is a carb. Whether you have carbs from gummy bears or carbs from an apple, 25 grams of carbs is always going to be 25 grams of carbs. However, the types of carbohydrates we eat also provide us with different things. So an apple is also going to provide us with other nutrients and fiber. And then the gummy bears would just be primarily a source of sugar. So that might be a great option for a performance athlete in the middle of a workout who's maybe bonking and wants to bring up their blood sugar levels. Okay, that's the point of those types of carbohydrates. When it comes to the reason why the types of carbs matter, we have to look at not only the nutrients, but from a fat loss standpoint, if we're only focusing on macros and we're not focusing on the source of those macros, we might have to diet on less food, because if we're eating more processed carbohydrates, we're missing out on the thermic effect of a lot of the more whole food based carbohydrates, which actually causes our body to burn some energy. So focusing on whole food based sources of carbohydrates is important. I also spoke a little bit about the importance of understanding the difference between carbs and then combination foods. So carb sources are going to be like your fruits and your vegetables, your rice, your potatoes, whole grain breads, oats, things like that. Combination foods are things like your sweets, your cookies, your chips, and things that have carbs and fats and other things that make them taste really good. And there is no reason why, and I didn't say this yet, but there is absolutely no reason why anybody needs to eliminate carbohydrates from their diet. Nobody, no matter who you are. Everybody should be able to eat a balance of carbohydrates and fats in their diet and still see great results. I think that the main problem is people do not understand how many carbohydrates their body needs. And a lot of people are very afraid of carbs, which also tends to lead them to overeat them because they try and cut them out and then they try and add them back in. It just becomes a vicious cycle. So if you guys want more details on learning about the amount of carbohydrates your body needs, which might actually shock a lot of you guys, I also plugged my 21-day jumpstart that is starting on February 11th. And you guys are all welcome to come along, have me coach you one-on-one for 21 days. And the link is going to be in the show notes. But that's all I got today, guys. I know I have to give you guys update on the gains train. I am planning on doing that as well. Just been kind of just managing mental energy with obviously being spent putting this all together for you guys. And that matters more to me, but I am doing well. Things are going good. So if y'all have any questions about carbohydrates, shoot me over a message and I will talk to you guys all on the next episode.